Yo, 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 guys, what is up? And welcome back to another episode of the Game 6 Clay podcast. It's your boy Gautam, my boys Matt and Chuck. Gentlemen, welcome back. It's been a minute. We've had our nice little off-season break. A lot of stuff has gone down since our last episode, where the Warriors unfortunately lost in 6 games to the Los Angeles Lakers in the second round. We've seen a conference finals. We've seen half of an NBA finals. And it was time to jump back on the mic. A lot of Warrior stuff to talk about, a lot of basketball, just in general stuff to talk about, catching up. But as always, gentlemen, how we doing? How we doing? How's the little hiatus been for you guys?
It's been good. Soaking in these playoffs, which have just been unreal. Giants baseball getting back into swing, baby.
Back.
Casey Schmidt, and Patrick Bailey are the second coming of Brandon Crawford and Buster Posey. No one can tell me different. I will not be fielding questions on this. So things are doing well. How about
That's
you,
right.
Matthew?
Yeah, life's good, man. I'm not gonna lie, it's been rested nights and sunshine days since the Warriors got knocked out. Versus the Lakers, been a nice few weeks. The playoffs, like you said, Chuck, have honestly kind of been all time. They feel like March Madness, which has been fun, man. Just 'cause you never know. I feel like there's been nothing outside of the Nuggets making the finals that has been like according to plan. So it's been really enjoyable. But no, guys, I'm excited to see you both. Excited to
And
talk Dubs off season, talk some Bob, all the good stuff. So
it's been a long time, man. It's felt like a while. It's been nice. It's been weird. We've been in these long playoff runs for a long time where you're just not you're so invested and like you said, Matt, your mentals aren't right until the draft. But to have a few playoff series on your belt with nothing on the line except some money here and there, it's been good. But like you said, man, let's just get right into it. The Warriors offseason got off to an early start this year and unfortunately saw the end of the tenure of one of the key pieces of this dynasty, Bob Myers. A hell of a run. Bob been here for 12 years, 4 championships, just guiding this team, the architect of obviously the dynasty that we know of today. And it was a bittersweet moment. I mean, I think throughout the season we kind of all were speculating, us fans, media, whoever it was. Bob obviously going into that last year of the contract, but officially announced on I think it was last week that he is indeed stepping down. Before we get into obviously the optics and what moves to be made, everything like that, just give me your thoughts, man, just on Bob and that whole how that played out. Just your thoughts on Bob not being a part of this dynasty and this team going forward.
yeah, my first thoughts. First of all, he'll definitely be missed. Bob was the man. I think more than anything, it's just the relationship aspect. Like I'm gonna get into some stuff about Bob's, actual tenure as in moves as a GM the last 3 or 4 years. But more than anything, the guy obviously has great rapport with Steph, with Draymond, with Clay, with Kerr. And it's not a coincidence that when you have, and he talks all about this. He's on a podcast with maybe it was Steve Kerr actually with Draymond, but just talking about how this has been Bob has been a big part of collaborating with the bigger pieces of the Warriors over the last literally 13, 12 years, right? Um, and as such, he was a guy who could count on to, we saw it in the playoffs, right? Talk to Draymond in the middle of a kind of a meltdown and say, hey, you can do it. You need to calm down. These guys are watching you, and this is a big game. Having that kind of gravitas is huge. Having the ability to talk with Steph, with Clay, especially with upcoming contract extensions, it's nerve wracking because the guy, for whatever else people might say about him, he was elite at the relationship aspect of this job. And when it comes to getting guys to take less money, which the Warriors, quite frankly, are going to have to do if they want to keep this train rolling, it's definitely a big miss. With that being said, Bob has been great. He's been great. We've also seen some of Bob's shortcomings the last few years, and maybe that's a result of burnout. Maybe it's a result of working with a guy like Lacob, who during that press conference with Bob Myers kind of showed, Jesus, man, working for you would probably be like, I can't even imagine. It's a 24/7 job, man. He's getting woken up in the middle of the night. He's up at 3 or 4 a.m. every day. It sounds like this guy's got a little girl, I'm pretty sure. So his life did not sound easy. So, but I'm just saying the last 3, 4 years, we've seen the championship year where Bob killed it, Otto Porter, Bielitsa, getting Gary Payton in there. But we've also seen Bob's hesitance and how maybe that cost the Warriors at certain points over the last couple of seasons during the trade deadline and things like that. That's not to say that, again, I want to be very clear. This team does not have Andrew Wiggins or Jonathan Kuminga. If it's not for Bob Myers. They didn't get Kevin Durant. It's not for Bob Myers. Who knows? Draymond might not be a Warrior right now if it weren't for Bob Myers. But as far as, what the Warriors need right now, they need some, in my opinion, some roster reconstruction. And whether through or because of, an unwillingness to separate certain guys, a hesitance to upset the owner, whatever it might be, Bob was not on top of that kind of stuff over the last year or two, in my opinion. That's not to say, again, he's going to get paid. He deserves to get paid. He'll be a GM somewhere else. I hope it's Golden State again. I hope the guy comes back. But I think it's okay to get some new blood in there and see if, we get somebody in here who can make some big moves.
Yeah, the thing too that stands out to me with Bob is, like you said, Matt, there were some misses here and there, but he was pretty unbelievable at maintaining the state of this roster once it had been built. And he had a big part in building that, obviously. But they lost a lot of talent in the front office. Travis Schlenk leaving was obviously a big one early. And he was the guy who time and time again had to step in and, okay, like he brought in KD, KD's leaving. It's weird to say he deserves credit for like D'Angelo Russell, but turning KD into something they could then later use to get Andrew Wiggins was unbelievable, and they might not have that fourth championship.
And a lottery pick too,
Yeah, Kuminga.
Exactly, yeah. And like you said, they don't have their two best wing defenders right now. If he isn't gritty and determined to just get something done out of this. And there have been so many other moves, like you said, the good free agent signings, Otto Porter Jr., Dante DiVincenzo, Gary Payton obviously was a huge get, so instrumental in what they've done. I think he's just really laid it all out there trying to keep this together. And you really saw at that press conference, like he looks very done. Like he looks like he needs a long break from basketball. And we know that tons of other businesses outside of basketball want him. We know Disney wants him. So
Bob Myers is going to be just fine. Bob Myers is going to be just fine.
Yeah.
But you're right, man. It felt like the end of the road for Bob, not in terms of like his ability to do the job, but he looked burnt out. And like even this season, just everybody makes jokes about, the Warriors having more podcast episodes than wins, but Bob was definitely dipping his toes in the other stuff. And we credit him for being the architect of the dynasty, and rightfully so. Starting from the Iguodala signing to drafting Barnes and Draymond and paying Steph that obviously that extension, the first one that allowed everything to happen. So Bob has been a part of it, but to be a part of also like this new era of the Warriors in the next 3, 4, whatever years it's going to come is the downfall of the dynasty, and like that's just how it's going to be. And so for Bob to be a part of those, like you say, he has relationships with guys like Steph, Clay, Draymond, Steve Kerr, who their futures are not outside of Steph Curry. Like their futures are not certain in terms of, are they going to be Warriors? What their contracts are going to look like? And those are tough conversations to have. I mean, as fans, that we don't want to let go of these players just yet. And I think we still believe that they could, they have another run, whatever it is. But for Bob to, oversee the end of the dynasty, that's a hard just kind of thing to come around. I also felt was kind of one of the bigger reasons for why he'd want to go away at this time. And he said it in his press conference that, the train's not done moving, but this is his stop. And it felt right. Like this felt like, the Bob Myers exit delivered another championship for us last year. And all the questions about the roster construction are rightfully so, I think, very, very valid. But, this season was, the chance to run it back with the core plus the young guys, and it didn't work out. So for Bob to, end his tenure on, the end of the 2 timeline plan or whatever it is, I think it's kind of a storybook in terms of, everything that he's done and where this team has come to at this point. But now you got to pivot. And I think, like you said, Matt, it's the perfect time to have new blood. I think Mike Dunleavy seems to be the go-to choice for number one. Obviously, Kirk Lacob's in there. There's other, front office guys that could step into the role, but it sounds like it's going to be an internal hire. So it's gonna be interesting. This offseason, I think, is the biggest since 2019. Like you brought up, Chuck, the one where KD the D'Lo trade and kind of set them up to run it back in 22. So this offseason is huge, and Joe Lacob, to his credit, man, we don't know what the moves are going to be made, but the man the one thing that we can guarantee for Joe Lacob is that he's going to do anything it takes to win. And whether that the direction of the franchise is what we agree with or not sure if that's going to be the case, but I have no doubt that, whoever steps into that role is going to do what what it takes to build a contender for this next coming season and hopefully the next couple.
Yeah, so kind of on a similar note, right? It's just been like an exit. It's been an end of the season moment the last month or so, right? We had Steve Kerr hop on Draymond's podcast. There's a lot to take away from that. First and foremost, I thought most encouraging thing was Draymond just sounds like he's coming back. Just the way they were talking, and even having Steve Kerr on in the first place, it was very much like hey, we're already thinking about next season. I can't imagine Steve Kerr hops on that podcast or Draymond has him on if it's an uncertain thing. I mean, it's always relatively uncertain, but that was encouraging in my mind. But we also had those comments kind of going around where veiled, not veiled, I don't know. The season did not end well, right? This was a rocky season. The season was like, you just know when a season's fun, when it's not fun. This was not a fun one for the Warriors, you could tell. And Steve Kerr on the podcast essentially said, the reason the Miami Heat are in the finals is because every guy bought in. Everybody there is for the team and not for themselves, and they want to win above all else. They're not worried about playing time, so on and so forth. There was a big reaction to this in the NBA Twitterverse, and a lot of it about whether or not these are veiled shots at the young guys, specifically Kuminga and Poole. Obviously, those are the two guys who had a lot of the, alleged, maybe we could say, attitude questions throughout the season and going into the postseason. The Poole's minutes being reduced, getting punched in the face, Kuminga not getting any run in the playoffs at all. What were your guys' reaction to those comments? For you, is it a big nothing burger? What did you think about that when you saw it come out?
I think the one thing that really stood out to me, I mean, like you said, it definitely seems like Draymond is coming back. But I don't know. It kind of feels like nothing. I think, there's been definitely some weirdness around the young guys, but yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what I was like. This team still came through and played like competitive basketball after one guy punched the other, so I'm sure they can get over a little like role dispute. Like if we know something about this team, it's that they can overcome personality problems or like conflicting visions and emotions. That's what they've been doing this entire time, at least since Kevin Durant arrived. That's been the norm of this team. So, even if something is going on there, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, most for the part, like it was a nothing burger. I honestly think that, Steve Kerr was right. Like the championship teams that we have seen are teams that have had guys that bought into their role. Guys like David West, Sean Livingston, Andre Iguodala taking a backseat and coming off the bench, like Andrew Bogut coming back in 2019, like stuff like that. There's so many guys, and I think it was more so a shot to the front office, the roster construction of this year's team. There was a lot of young guys. We said this the entire season. You can't, and it turned out to be true. Like you can't win a championship when you have 6 guys under the age of 23. Like I'm 23. We're 20. Chuck, you're 24. Matt, you're 20. You got to have like we got to have more Matts than we have more like me and Chucks. Like you got to have guys that have seen what it takes to win. At least be in that age range. Like Jonathan Kuminga can't go buy a beer right now. Like no Moses Moody can't. And I love these guys. I'm not saying that they can't develop into that. And I think they will. Like I like the way that these guys have grown. But to win a championship where you're at right now with where Steph Curry is in his career, and I think that has to be paramount into what goes into the roster construction. And look, man, Steph Curry had to give a speech in Game 7 before going out to Sacramento. pleading his teammates that were not like bought into playing time or whatever. And that's the case with young guys. And Jordan Poole and Jonathan Kuminga, obviously the easiest ones to pick out. But this was kind of a thing that it's deeper than I think just calling out two players. I think Steve Kerr is media savvy. He knows exactly what he was saying, and I think it was just a message to the front office like, hey, this is what it takes to win. You're seeing guys like Caleb Martin, Duncan Robinson, you get so many guys step up for the Heat, and rightfully so. Like they deserve to be where they're at right now in the finals, and the Warriors have been there. They know what it takes in terms of the type of people that can help contribute to winning a championship. And Jordan Poole was one of those guys. Like I feel like people forget like what he did last season. So it's not that he can't be that guy on this team. Can't like with the cost of Jordan Poole now and the other people around this team. I don't think Jordan Poole can be your fifth oldest vet anymore. But so that's where I think the comments were more so striking. It was more so just a plea to the front office of saying like, hey, this is what we need. We have the framework of a championship team. We just gotta improve on the margins, which is where the Warriors lost this last season.
Yeah, I think I more or less. Go ahead, Chuck.
One thing I would like to point out: Moses Moody had his 21st birthday.
Never mind. Go get a beer, Moses. Go get him. Go get.
Yeah. So now that Moses. He'll get a few beers in him. He'll get that confidence. Big year 3 incoming.
There we go. All right, never mind, Moses. Good for you, brother. Happy birthday.
And Moses can stay as far as I'm concerned. No, but I was gonna say those comments. I have a few kind of thoughts. So first of all, my first reaction was like, "Damn, that was cold from Steve Kerr." Then I kind of chilled out of it, and I was like, you know what? He's not lying. He's just saying Miami won because of this. But also, it's one of those things where like if he's saying like, yeah, this team bought in. And that's why they're winning. And if you're a player in the Warriors and you're like, he's taking shots at me, that's you saying I didn't buy in. You know what I mean? That's you saying I was a pain in the ass in this role. I did not do what I was supposed to. Okay. And that's you acknowledging that you were the problem, even if you're not realizing that. Right. And so JK and Poole perhaps, or maybe in their feelings about what Kerr said, hey, like Draymond said on the podcast, and this is the thing I have a big problem with in general, guys don't win by coincidence, right? Steph doesn't have 4 championships by coincidence. Steve Kerr doesn't have 9 championships by coincidence, right? These guys know what it takes to win. And when they say things, it's better to listen than to not listen. So when Steve Kerr is saying things like these guys aren't buying in, if I'm the front office, whatever it might be, if I'm those guys, I need to realize, yeah, I do need to buy in. And if not, yeah, realistically speaking, if you're not willing to fight for and earn your minutes on a championship team, you need to be somewhere else. That's kind of my mindset right now. I love JK. I love Poole. But yeah, I do think Kerr knew what he was saying. Gautam, you said the guy is media savvy. He 100% is. The guy is Steve Kerr. He was on broadcast for a long time, a podcast for a minute. Yeah, he knows what he's doing, and I was mostly okay with it. And I also just feel like at this point, you can't go into after a turbulent season like this one. I'm sorry if whatever you as Steve Kerr need to do to get your point across that you can't go into next season with that same level of turbulence. You need to do that. You need to make it clear, like, hey, one of the many reasons we lost last year is because we had a bunch of guys playing for themselves, right? And that's just the case.
And that's not just young guys. I think that there's a conversation to have with guys like Clay too. Like I think that but people are thinking. I think people have made this like a young guys versus vets kind of thing, which maybe there are some aspects of that, but it's a team. It's been a team thing this entire season. Like we've seen it. So yeah, totally agree there.
No, 100%. It's also not to say that JK shouldn't have gripes about not having played in the playoffs, right? The guy was a rotation player for 2/3 of the season. Then all of a sudden, after I'm guessing he played like 9 actual meaningful minutes in the playoffs, and besides those 9 meaningful minutes, was completely pulled out of the rotation. So if he's frustrated, he is a 7th pick in the draft. His contract is still a couple of years out, but like, hey. He's probably concerned about his money. It makes sense. It makes sense, but also you got to start doing the things that are going to win. As an organization, you need to have guys on your team who are on the same page. And that's more so what Steve Kerr was talking about, is having guys who are on the same page. It did not matter. It doesn't matter that Gabe Vincent's, 26, hasn't gotten a big contract yet. Duncan Robinson was but it didn't play. He was out of the rotation for most of the season this year. Max Strus, same thing as Vincent in a lot of ways. Like these guys they're not out for anything but winning. And that's kind of the main thing that Steve Kerr was saying, is like, hey, we need to have guys who are on the same page. And that's why teams win titles. If you don't have guys that aren't on the same page or that are on the same page, you're not winning a title. You're just not. And so that's kind of what I took from it. I was initially kind of like, Hey, I don't know about that Steve Kerr. Then I kind of came around to it. The legend Tim Kawakami also brought up just saying, you know who else had to fight for their minutes? Steph Curry as a rook had to fight for his
AC
minutes,
Law,
right?
baby. AC
Yeah,
Law
this
taking
guy
those minutes.
this guy had to fight for his minutes. The fact that young guys got to fight and fight for their playing time, it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be this crazy idea. And it's not, again, not to say that the young guys have been handled perfectly. They have 100% not been handled with anything close to perfection by the Warriors. But if you want to win titles, get guys who are on the same page. That was my reaction.
Elite. Well done, Matt. Well done. Great reaction. And I think that's exactly that's kind of what the teams the organization itself, they're at a fork in the road right now. Like, what direction are you going to go? I think a lot of the fans, a lot of the players, the Steph Curry and this core, they can still do it. We saw it. They still had the top. I think that by the end of the season, they were still the leading plus minus in terms of that starting lineup. It's can you get guys to supplement that bench that can, like you said, buy to your role, do what it takes to contend and get these guys over the hump. They're getting older, so they need more help than they ever have before. But that doesn't mean that they can't do it. And that brings up kind of a segue into just the roster construction. This last year, what do we have? 5 rookie contracts with Moses, Jonathan. 6, PBJ, Rollins. I guess Poole was on his rookie contract too. So I'll let Chuck give us this scenario. But Chuck, walk us through what you were talking to us before the record button got hit.
Yeah. So my question was, you got 6. So you had 6 last year. Poole's going to his extension, so he's technically off the rookie contract phase. But you got number 19 pick coming in, so they project to be right back at having 6. So for you guys, what is the maximum allowable number of those contracts on the books next year? Like, regardless of which player it is or who they're, keeping, not keeping, whatever. Like, at what point do you say, all right, this is too many young guys?
I say you cut that motherfucker you cut that thing in half. 3. I think 3 is the sweet spot. I think that's one that you can still develop the young talent that you want, and still build a title contender with the necessary vets that you're going to need to have. And I think that the guys we have right now, JK, Rollins, PBJ, Moody, the 19th pick. Don't know if I'm missing one in that 6, but those guys, if let's just take those 5 for right now. I'd love to keep Kuminga. I'd love to keep Moody. I'd love to keep PBJ. I don't know how possible this is, just in terms of, obviously, like you mentioned, Jordan Poole is now in the extension contract. So now much larger of a trade asset. And I think, so one of those guys, and I'm leaning towards Jonathan Kuminga being one that would be involved in some of these trade talks if that is what happens this offseason. But you got guys like PBJ, who's a 6'10" sniper. We saw what he could do in limited action last year. I think the guy plays and Wiseman, correct. And so PBJ, I like the way he can fit. I think that in year 2, hopefully takes that next step, kind of like we saw JK do, Moody, as he did in the playoffs. And if you can keep Moses Moody, man, I think that's a good one. I think Rollins, tough luck. But if very down to ship him away. I think you got to trade the 19th pick for a piece right now. But if you can find a way to keep, a PBJ and Moody, and if that's 2, I guess. But and Jonathan Kuminga, if that's possible. But I would say 3 at the most. But given what the trade scenarios might look like, I know that's not possible. So 2 to 3, with PBJ and Moody being top priority, knowing that Kuminga is going to be one of those valuable trade assets.
So I'm gonna zag a little bit here. Actually, I'm okay with having. Listen, if Moody, Kuminga, and PBJ are all on the team next year, I'm cool with that. I'm also cool with 19. Chuck, I really want to hear your thoughts, maybe on a later pod, about just potential draft picks the Warriors can take at 19 who actually might be, NBA ready. But if they have those three guys, Moody, Kuminga, Patrick Baldwin, and a 19th pick who can do something, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with four guys on those rookie contracts going into next season. Rollins needs to be gone. It's nothing against the kid, but he hasn't played yet. He hasn't shown he's going to be ready to play anytime soon. It's just a wasted roster spot. I think JK can and should be a rotation player in the NBA. That's kind of what this team needs. They need rotation players. I think Patrick Baldwin Jr. can be a really, really solid fit next to a lot of the Warriors. I shouldn't say a lot of their bigs, next to both Draymond and Looney, though. Okay. Moody, we just saw in the playoffs ball out. I don't know, again, 19th pick, who knows? I prefer to trade it, but if it came down to it and they picked a guy who's 21, 22, 23, and actually like an NBA ready player, hey, that's a rotation player as an 82 game player, right? That's not ideal, but 4 is probably the most I'd be okay with. With that being said, I doubt that'll be the case. I think the Warriors, like you mentioned, Gautam, I think if Poole's going out, which they're maybe 60-40 likelihood at this point that he's going out, right? It would make sense to maybe get JK there too to see what else you can get back. And that's not, I think Poole has a lot of value despite, popular belief. I think they get any guys 23 years old, averaging 25 as a starter. That's not very common. But I think it's more likely that the Warriors come back with 3 than 4. However, I am okay with 4. And that's also assuming, sorry, no disrespect, that Jordan Poole is gone. Juxer.
Yeah. So the thing with me is it's so weird how this team is gonna like structure things out. So let's assume and it's nothing against Rollins, but the guy, he had some decent showings. Defense was a work in progress, but he was just not healthy at all last year, and the Warriors can't afford to, say what you will about these other guys that they've had on the team. They've all been available. And that's really key for this team when they're trying to work around the roster spot crunch. But let's just look. So right now, starting 5 under contract: Steph, Clay, Wiggins, Draymond, Looney. Gary Payton definitely coming back. Jordan Poole, if they don't trade him, that would be 7 guys already locked in. If they do trade him, it would probably be for multiple players, whether that's 2 or 3 guys that they'd expect to have in the rotation. It's tough to say. They could also have Dante coming back. He's got that player option, so we'll see what works there. But that's at least 7 or 8 roster spots that are going to be taken up, whether or not Jordan Poole is on the team. And if you have Patrick Baldwin, Kuminga, Moody, 19th pick, that gets you up to 12 already. We know the Warriors really don't like using that 15th roster spot, annoyingly so. So that's kind of where the math gets troubling to me, is if they're only leaving themselves with 2 or 3 spots to go get free agency acquisitions, it might get a little ugly. And what really, the thing that really pisses me off is I've already made my peace with the fact that Andre Iguodala is coming back to play at best 15 games, and do really not much besides defending point guards. So that's the thing is these teams, like the Warriors, have built these great teams off having good free agent acquisitions and being able to build in guys around the fringes. So I do love the idea of Moses Moody sticking around, and I love what Patrick Baldwin Jr. brings to the table, but I'm wondering if they can afford to limit themselves to only a couple roster spots in free agency. So that's why I think the most you can keep here is 3, and maybe you cut it down to 2, just to try to maximize that window for, if that means trading 19 and Poole and Kuminga to go get a big star, or, just making a whole bunch of other moves to get controllable role guys, then that's what you have to do. But I don't even think they can handle having 4 rookie contracts right now.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like, so I would only be okay with him having 4 if, again, Poole is 100% gone, and then you have 4 additional roster spots to fill out. And even then, let's say again, so you said 6, 7. We know who's going to be there for sure, right? You said it. It's Steph, Clay, Wiggs, Dre, Looney, GP2, right? We know those 6 guys are 99% going to be on the roster next year, right? I'm assuming, in kind of like what I was counting, Chuck, is just that I think Poole is gone. And I think if Poole is gone, I think one of those guys is gone as well. And then you're left with, like you said, 3. You're at 9, right? At which point, like you said, it's 5 more likely than 6 because of how the Warriors operate. I think that leaves them plenty of room, to be honest. I think even if Iguodala comes back, I'm still okay with that, just because if, again, there are other roster spots that are still open. So if Iguodala is, when I say 10th guy, I don't mean in your rotation. I just mean out of the guys we're counting. If he's the 10th guy and there are 4 more spots to fill up and they can do that, that's not bad. I think Moody is at a point now where he's going to be trending towards that veteran status. It's only his 3rd year in the league, but I just see him as a guy who is going to be, hopefully next year. We said this last year, so I could be totally wrong. High upside Damian Lee, right? That's kind of like where he could be next year, bigger, longer. Who knows? Okay, but I do feel okay about them bringing back similar, not too far off from you, but 2 to 4. And again, that is if Poole is back though, it's got to be. It can't be 3. It's got. I think it's closer to 2 if Poole is back. So you got to move those young guys and get some more veteran help around them because we've seen Jordan Poole without a lack of veteran depth behind him, and it's not pretty. So I'm more or less on the same page, but I do think they can survive having a couple more guys if Poole is gone.
And that kind of brings you to like the biggest question of this offseason is what happens with Jordan Poole, because I think if you bring him back, you're essentially running it back with the same squad that we saw, flame out in the second round this year. And you can, whatever, excuses, stuff that happened, injuries came up, Steph was out, Wiggins was out, guys didn't develop as well as you thought they would. But essentially that is the biggest question. And it's funny, I forget some article came out after the Warriors lost, and it was Steph Curry pointing to Jordan Poole and saying he's the key to whatever happens. And I think it was more so of like them being successful on the court and to win a championship that year. But Jordan Poole is the key in terms of where this roster goes. Either way, the guy signed a contract, and I think rightfully so. I think going into last season, we all expected Jordan Poole to take that next step, and obviously didn't. But that contract and that Jordan Poole is going to be where this franchise pivots. Either you go all into this current squad that you have that I mean for all the shortcomings, I still believe that they could have made a run, having the right pieces, guys playing to their potential, but that didn't happen. So you're in this very, very just like tentative area where you have 3 years left of Steph. And that's really where I think that this decision needs to come down to is you have to maximize every single minute that Steph Curry plays in a Warriors uniform remaining. And I don't know if Jordan Poole is that guy in terms of, committing all that money and still being able to build a team around that. Obviously, I think Draymond comes back, like you said, Matt. I think he's going to take that option. So it really comes down to, are you willing to sell on Jordan Poole right now? And if so, which of those other young guys? Is it Moody? Is it Kuminga? Who gets thrown into that package, and what do you get back? And so really, what do you guys think, man? Like that I feel is the biggest question going into this offseason. Do you run it back with this squad, or do you revamp ever so slightly by just moving off Jordan Poole?
Yeah, I just think it's almost untenable to run it back. I mean, I think it might have been, I don't remember where you guys were. I think I felt fairly confident that the Warriors could overcome the punch. I just don't think that's a reasonable prospect. And I think it's one thing to not love each other, as a team. It's okay. Teams win not being best friends all the time. I think actually disliking one another and having stuff like that makes things a lot more difficult, right? And I think and again, if Jordan Poole was like, hey, Draymond Green got off scot-free for punching me in the face, I'm pissed off about it still, I don't blame him. The guy missed a game. He knocked out his teammate. And the team, more or less, I mean, long term, it's obviously showing they stood by Draymond. They want Draymond back more than they want Poole back. I think that's pretty clear. And if you're Jordan Poole and you're like, I don't know, I don't really want to be here, the guy who knocked me out last year, and a guy who I looked up to before, it seemed like, right? It looks like Jordan Poole and Draymond had a good relationship going into last year, and contention at that time, sure, Poole's got a big head, Draymond's got a big head, right? But I don't see them running it back as a reasonable possibility to win a title. But with that being said, let's say they do run it back. I just think they need to be willing to change things up a little bit. And I know I kind of harped on this last year. I think Clay right now is like, he's going to be kind of a lightning rod for a lot of conversation throughout the next year until he's a free agent. But I just feel like you as a franchise need to keep revisiting whether or not Jordan Poole should start if he stays. That's if he stays, just because again, we see the difference. We saw the evidence in year one of Jordan Poole's kind of breakout. The Warriors get that 18-2 start. It's not a coincidence. It's not to say they're worse with Clay. They won a championship, won a title with Clay playing more minutes than anybody else in the roster, right? But I think that's something that if he stays, which I don't think they should keep Jordan Poole, to be clear. I just think if that's the route they go, they got to start looking at making some lineup changes here and there to kind of smooth some things over. And I'm curious to see how that goes. But with that being said, no. Trade Jordan Poole, trade one or two of the kids. Chuck already mentioned it. We're going to talk. We got to talk in the next few weeks about potential trades, just kind of go through what things might look like. That'll be fun. But it's got to be Poole for depth or Poole in a pick, Poole in picks, Poole in a young guy, Poole in a couple of young guys for an actual second option on a team that clearly does not have a guy who the Warriors can bank on to score 20 plus points a night. So no, I don't think they can run it back. I think that'd be a really silly move. But if they do, they need to kind of consult and look at themselves and say, hey, how can we change things to make things more suitable for the most talented guys on our team to succeed?
Yeah, 100%. I think you nailed it too with like there is a world where they could do this around Jordan Poole, but it's very specific. And I think it involves, like you said, a tough conversation with Clay of saying like, okay, here are our numbers. Like you perform well with or without the starting lineup. Like, yes, it's a little bit worse without the starting lineup, but you still have the same mentality. You're still executing. Jordan is not the same right now. Like Jordan needs that structure around him, or else it's just going to completely fall apart. If you sell this vision to Clay of, we're going to take care of you with this contract status. Like we've done it before. They gave him the max, no questions asked when he had his injuries. It's been very expensive, but that has paid off. Like I don't think the Warriors would be unhappy about paying $170 million for how crucial he was to that championship. And Clay's not going to be mad about it either. So I think if you can go to him and say, hey, we're going to augment the depth around you. We're going to have you essentially coming off the bench as the sixth man. You'll probably still close games when it's all said and done. But we need to get Jordan in with the starters, or else it's just not going to work for him. And I think Clay's the kind of guy who could understand that. Like we've seen Draymond embrace coming off the bench at times. We've seen Kevon Looney do it all the time. And
saw Steph Curry in the
yeah, exactly. Like everyone has had their turn at having to, take one for the team just to let the starting lineup grow. Or to let someone else develop better in their role. So yeah, I think there's absolutely a world where they keep Poole. We'll definitely have more time to get into all these specific trades and what other things they can do with it, but I think it's silly to pretend that they couldn't make this work.
Totally. And like you said, guys, we'll have a lot of time to get into it. The season's not even over. Before we get out of here, NBA Finals going on. Game 4 tonight, Miami versus Denver. It's been refreshing, man. It's been fun to watch two teams that really deserve to be there. Denver has been, pretty much the best team throughout the season, and obviously everybody's been tuning into Miami's just insane run so far as an 8th seed. Give me your quick thoughts on the finals. Denver's up 2-1, big game 4 tonight. What have you guys seen just from Jamal, Jokic, the Nuggets, and the Heat, and what does that tailoring it more to a Warriors thing? What does this showing you that the Warriors need to do to get back or be a championship contender going into next season?
Yeah, first of all, what a fun playoffs. We talked about it a little bit early on, but it's been so cool. And there's one of those finals where, first of all, obviously none of us have high stakes in it. Chuck, you might be rooting for Denver pretty hard because you're living out there right now. But it's just like either way, you're going to be so happy for these teams if they win. You have an 8 seed led by an all-time coach, an all-time hustler in Jimmy Buckets. That would be awesome. Obviously, great story. A bunch of guys like we already talked about who are buying in. It's really cool. The Nuggets, who are kind of like a pretty fun facsimile of the Warriors in a lot of ways, mostly homegrown talent. Aaron Gordon kind of is their Iguodala in a lot of ways. Guy they picked up, not in free agency but in a trade. It's cool. It's cool stuff. It's just been awesome basketball, man. Jokic, I think. Listen, we are all, to an extent, some of us more than others, looking at you, Gotham Warriors homers. But I mean, we all kind of acknowledge this, I think, going into the postseason. But Jokic is just like I think it's absurd that this guy. You watch this guy and he doesn't do anything wrong. Like, he can't, in my opinion, he quite literally cannot have a bad game. Like, he couldn't. Like, it seems his floor game is 20, 10, and 7. But I've never even seen that happen. You know what I mean? But he's also making all the right plays. If he has 7 assists, it's probably, and this is not like me trying to take away from his teammates who have been awesome, but it's probably because his teammates weren't hitting, right? And that's fine. He's unselfish, maybe to a fault sometimes. But the guy it's so cool to watch this guy. It's interesting to hear the national media do the whole thing where it's like, were we wrong about Jokic? Like, yes, you were wrong about Jokic. This guy is incredible, man. This guy, this is not for me to do the MVP thing, but I think Jokic has, first of all, A, established himself as the best player in the world, and B, has put the stuff away where that third MVP, had he gotten it, would have been more than justified. And we'd be watching this. We still are watching this all-time great historic season. Chuck, I just want to point this out real quick. There's that Jamal Murray. I love Jamal Murray also. The guy's a hustler. This is not at all against him. He's also, the fact that he's never been an all-star, he's also having an all-time playoff run. Insane. This guy's averaging, I think, 30 points a game for the playoffs. He's been incredible. But Stat Muse, the good old Stat Muse, posting Jamal Murray, Steph Curry comparison stats for their first NBA Finals. Here's what I want to say real quick. I love Jamal Murray. If you had Steph Curry playing next to Nikola Jokic, there's not a better match made. God himself cannot put two twins in the same womb and hope for more, man. Okay, this is like, it would be more than you could ever ask for. So listen, Murray's doing wonderfully. This team is probably going to win the finals. They're having an all-time great duo run. But please, Stat Muse, just bite your tongue, okay? But overall, no, great finals, man. I'm picking Nuggets probably in 6. I would say I'd be surprised if Miami doesn't steal one more, but that's where I'm at. It's been nothing but enjoyable thus far, outside of some discourse here and there.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because nothing infuriates me more than, like, Jamal Murray has been so good, and the only way that people can deal with it is by saying, well, how does he rank compared to the best point guard in the playoffs of the last 30 years? Like, come on, like, give him a chance, let him be his own thing. Like, saying the first 3 games, and like, yeah, you saw my tweet pointing it out, like, Steph Curry has played in 34 finals games. Like, it's so ridiculous.
They
Like,
should just
why are
check the
you
next
putting
3
that
games of
evil
the
on
first
Jamal?
series. They should just check the next 3 games of that first final series. Like, that, the number, like, the Stat Muse thing, man, was just like, it felt like more so just trying to find a shot at Steph. And somebody brought up the LeBron numbers too, and it was worse than Jamal. And I was like, this is exactly the kind of discourse we have nowadays.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is no one like gives any like context. Like, like you put the LeBron numbers out there. That was because he was playing like the Spurs at like the height of their powers. Like,
there's no sense.
Jamal, all credit like due to the Heat, but they're trying to guard him with like Gabe Vincent and ancient Kyle Lowry and like all these other guys that have no business trying to check.
And he's playing with one of the 2 greatest offensive players in the last 35 years. I'm just saying, man, it's not
greatest big man we've seen in a long time.
It's just silly. Like, why put that on Jamal? He's amazing in his own right. You don't have to go comparing him to like one of the best point guards we've ever seen.
And Matt, to your point about the homerism, you're right. But if anybody told me that they're taking Nikola Jokic over Steph Curry right now, I don't think I can. I don't think I'd fight that. That's a very, very good basketball player. Just fun to watch. And I love how he just takes it to the media too. Like, hey, Nikola, how's it feel to drop a 30-point triple-double in the finals? Yeah, I don't care. We got the win. Love that from Jokic. But we have a fun game 4 here tonight. And we'll definitely be back. A lot more trades and offseason stuff to get into for the Warriors. But before we get out of here, gentlemen, as always, anything shout out, anything on the horizon?
Man, on the horizon, definitely. I've had my little hiatus, time to get back, putting the words to paper. Definitely have some stuff coming soon for the swishtheory.com as always. Love my guys there. And yeah, that's about it. You can catch me as always at Claytheist11 on Twitter. And yeah, shout out to Nikola Jokic's horses. You know, I'm 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 personally I'm very excited for the series to be over one way or the other, just knowing that he will be on the next flight to Serbia and be immediately back in the stables. That gives me a lot of comfort.
I love it.
Yeah, I got nothing. Keep reading Chuck. I'm glad Chuck's getting back in the swing of things. I'll be writing again once the season starts, most likely. But no, up until then, guys, keep listening to the pod. We're gonna have hopefully some more consistent episodes. It's been kind of a turbulent few weeks for all of us. So we're gonna figure out what schedule works best for us over the course of the off season leading up to the draft and then free agency.
Amen. Can't add anything more than that. As always, thanks for listening. We'll get you guys right for the off season with all the stuff that's going to be going around. But until the next episode, guys, peace.